So, yeah, hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Tane, your host for today, and I'm really excited to kick off the first n8n meetup. So, I'm joining in from Berlin, and I know we have a very international audience and speaker lineup. So, I'd love to know where you're joining us from today. So, please say hi and share in the chat. Cool. So, if you haven't had the chance to take a look at the agenda yet, we have five speakers who will be joining us today. So first of all, we have a session by our founder and CEO, Jan Oberhauser, joining us from Bavaria to talk about Fair Code and why he decided to start it. After that, we'll have a short Q&A session. Please send in any questions that you have, or in case if you face any technical issues in the chat, and we'll get that sorted right away. We'll then be joined by Jason, who is joining in from Canada today, who will give us an introduction to n8n. And I got a peek at his demo. It's really cool. So looking forward to that as well. We will then have another Q&A round, after which we'll have three lightning talks. So we're joined by Richard from Portugal, Clément from France, and Michael from Spain. So they'll be sharing their experience with n8n and all the cool stuff that they have been working on. And at the end, we have office hours. So in case if you have any questions about n8n, your workflows, your use cases, feel free to stick around and we'll answer them. So let's get started by welcoming Jan Oberhauser. So Jan, over to you.
Okay, now. Okay, first, thanks everybody for joining. Really cool to see so many faces all around the world and there's so many participants in general. I, like Tanner said, I'm the founder of and CEO of n8n, and I talk a little bit today about fair code, why I get started, and I kind of talk a fair bit today also about the origin, because I think it's very important to understand why it got started, to really understand why it exists and why it's important that it exists. So first about the background, like in the beginning of, no, it was actually the end of 2019, I had worked like 1.5 years on n8n part-time. That means the progress was very slow because obviously I worked just part-time on it, and I had another job, another startup to actually earn some money. But I wanted to make sure that at some point build a commercially viable product that I can spend my full time working on and still support my family at the same time. So I thought about different alternatives. For me, it was clear I kind of wanted to open source n8n because I really wanted to make sure that everybody can use the product for free. I wanted to make sure that everybody can adopt it. But I also knew that if I'm going to do that, the chances are very high that I'm going to release the code. Somebody else probably going to take the code, package it up, offer it hosted somewhere, and they're going to charge money for that. And I probably going to be stuck to kind of keep on building the product, going to support their users, going to fix bugs, do anything like that. Especially did have a problem with having to support, still having to support the people, but in the end, I still have to compete with my own product. So I was looking for an alternative, how I can avoid that, to build a sustainable business, but still have it available for free. So then I found a commons clause. The commons clause, you can add that one to any kind of open source license, and we added it to Apache 2, which took away the right to commercialize the source code. That was exactly what I wanted. That means people could still use it for free, but if they want to commercialize the code or want to earn money with it, they have to get a specific license from me at that point, now from n8n. But that change meant that n8n was not open source anymore. It wasn't OC approved open source anymore. And because of that, that's why all the problems started. The reason why I had so many problems was that I decided to still call it open source in quotes, because there was no other term for that, meaning there's only open source in that open source. There was like nothing in between, meaning even though you could still do more or less the same thing than with open source, which is the most important thing for 99% of the people. You can use it for free, you can extend it and so on. The OC doesn't like if you use the term, but again, I still chose it because for me it was clear that's still the clearest to transportate the meaning of what people can do with the code of n8n. So, and after I launched, that was okay for a little while, but after a few hours, somebody posted on the community forum that I'm gaslighting people. At the same time, that the same person, some other people post on Hacker News, yeah, that it's not open source, they should take it down and so on. What they proposed was that they should call it source available. The problem with source available is that it means exactly that, meaning that the source code is available, but you maybe cannot even use it, meaning an MIT licensed product is source available. Any kind of proprietary source you put online without a license is also source available, and even if you cannot use it. So meaning I did not really see a I did not really see a reason to use a term if it doesn't really have any meaning at all. So I then talked with some people. Also, the president of the OC reached out, and we tried to find a solution. At least I proposed that they could, for example, implement some kind of level system, like they still have the regular open source that is exactly what how they define it right now. But for example, have like a level 2 where people could take away like additional rights. Like level 2 would be take away the communization rights. Level 3, something else. Even though it was a very nice conversation with him, and he was a great guy, he didn't really warm up to ideas very much. So meaning we could not find a solution there. But I didn't really want to give up. Like I saw that it happened, something similar what happened to me happened to a lot of people before, meaning it was a problem that is going to stay around if it's not going to get solved at some point. So I then tried to find a solution, and that's how kind of fair code started to exist. I wanted to make sure that there is a term that people can use to exactly describe the kind of products. Because right now, that if you look online, there's like so many projects, like, for example, Elasticsearch recently changed the license, like more and more projects going that way, but none of them is allowed to use the open source term anymore, or have any alternative term. By creating a term and making clear what it means, people can understand what fair code stands for. They know exactly, hey, for me, fair code doesn't make a difference. It's, for me, it's directly exchangeable with open source. I still know I can use it for free, which matters for the most end users. But at the same time, also know, okay, if I want to commercialize it, it's not allowed. I had multiple conversations with multiple people, and one of them was also Kenneth. He was also part of the GitHub conversation. And when I was in San Francisco, beginning of last year, I actually met with him in a pub, and we realized that our ideas about how an alternative to open source should look like pretty much aligned. So we then created the fair code definition in the website, and then we launched that. As soon as I posted that in this GitHub issue, the most people were actually quite relieved, and surprisingly, the most conversations stopped then. So that means it kind of worked. There were still some discussions around me using the terms open and free, but that are minor issues. I think even like the president of the OC and the person started the conversation was quite happy about the solution, meaning they did not have a problem of the project not being open source. They had the main problem was really to using the term. So that was the background. So what does fair code really mean? It means the source code is openly available and visible. People can distribute it, and they can still use it totally for free. The only thing that's really not allowed is that you can use the code to directly earn money with it. So you cannot use that code and you can start your own project and charge people for it. So now, why should anybody choose fair code, or what are the advantages for using for fair code? The advantage for maintainers, I think, is very clear. Like you can release your product for free for everybody, but you still have a clear way to monetize a product. Especially don't you have to go, you not have to go down the open core route, which I also wanted to avoid, because open core always means I have to make my product artificially worse to earn money. And I wanted to make sure that everybody has the best available product to use for free without that restriction in place. Also, open source projects actually win. The reason for that is that fair code projects like us are normally financially more viable, meaning they have more money to spend, and it's also in our interest to support projects we depend upon ourselves. Like that's what we do. For example, like every employee at n8n, he can decide where to spend where to donate $100 a month to what kind of open source project. Meaning, like this, we can help the projects we depend upon, and we can help the open source ecosystem in general. Also, it's in the interest of the users because they can still use the product for free, but they know that the product behind is financially healthy, and they know that the project can spend money on hiring people to, for example, fix bugs, add new features, improve the documentation, answer questions in the forum, and so on. Even the companies that have to get now a license have to pay for them. Even they are actually winning. At least what I also realized in many conversations I had, because they know that the money they're spending does not go, it's not lost. The money goes directly back into the project, meaning the money they spend goes into adding new features and making the product better and more stable, which makes their product, on the other hand, also better and more stable. So you have this nice circle where everybody is winning. Okay, I think I'm a little bit over my time, sorry. But yeah, I hope that makes it clear.
Cool. Thank you so much, Jan. And we have a 4-minute Q&A slot. So in case you have any questions to ask Jan, please send them through in the chat and we'll answer them. Stefan says, thank you for the explanation. Much appreciated. Should we maybe drop a link to Faircode's website? I'll do that in the chat in case you'd like to go check it out. Puneet asks, what is the cost of a license? Jan, I think I'll have to unmute you. There you go.
Okay, my son is trying, sorry. The cost of a license, there's no fixed cost. What we're doing is like we normally do revenue, do something like revenue share. One second. Sorry. We do something like revenue share, meaning like we want to make sure that that people only have to pay us if they actually earn money, and at the same time we can make sure that if the product grows, we're growing with them. So it means like it's really, we're very flexible, but normally we do revenue share deals, and that the amount really depends on the project and how they're gonna earn money, and if it's B2B or B2C. But so if anybody's interested, they can simply write an email to license@n8n.io, and then we can have a conversation about it.
Cool. So the next question is from Tom, who asks, nice to hear about the background of Faircode. Do you know if the model was adopted by other projects?
I heard about 2 projects. One I sadly forgot the name. The other one is Erxis. It's just like in marketing. I don't know how to describe itself, but I think Erxis, if you type that in, I can post a link. They also adopted it. And I think maybe some smaller ones. But it's actually one thing I'm working on right now is getting the term Faircode more widely known, and also talking with companies that's actually already using Faircode compatible licenses to actually get them to adopt the term. Because I think the more people adopt it, obviously the better it's going to be for everybody if people understand what it's for and what it means.
Cool. Then we have a question. What's the percentage from revenue that will be charged?
That really depends really on the use case. B2B we charge normally more than B2C because they have obviously then there's the server cost, the fixed cost they have per month is much higher. So it's really a case-by-case decision. For example, they really range from very low to probably around 30%, because we have, for example, also some, normally we aim for around 30%. But if people have higher costs, for example, a very high server cost, or they have, for example, high traffic costs, or we work with some company that does, for example, SEO, and they have high costs regarding that to get the data, then we also go lower. In the end, normally I go also lower if I see that in the end, what's important for me is that if we agree on the terms now, I want to make sure that they're long-term viable and feel right for both sides, meaning I don't want to renegotiate it again in a year. For me, it's much more important that they make money and we make money. Both sides feel like it's a fair deal. And if they say, hey, 30% is too much, then we do less if they have a reason. And I was like, we just closed actually one deal and he offered 30%, but after the costs he had, I said, okay, let's do 25, because it just makes much more sense if he wants to build a sustainable business. So we're quite flexible there.
Cool. Thanks, Jan. So I see we have one more question from Bjorn. Sorry, Bjorn, we'll cover it during the office hours at the end, if that's okay. Cool. So moving on to the next session is Jason McFeetors, who is going to give us an introduction to n8n. So Jason, take it away.
Right, thanks a lot, Tane, and thanks, Jan. That was good information and good insight for a lot of us. I think what I'm going to do to begin here is share my screen, and Tane, I'll have to get you to allow me to do that.
Harshil, could you? Okay, cool. Just a second, Jason.
No problem. One of the nice things about the n8n team, they always work together to get the problem resolved.
Jason, can you try now?
There we go.
Awesome.
Perfect. So everybody should be able to see my screen now. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about n8n, a little bit of an introduction to it for you through a project that I've been working on. And I've named my little presentation, Build Like a Farmer. So for those of you who know me and know a little bit about my background, I grew up on the farm. I'm from rural Manitoba, Canada. And so unlike a lot of people, I spent my days on the fields, on the tractor, milking cows, feeding chickens, that type of thing, which is often an unusual thing nowadays where so many people grow up in the city. So I like to have a lot of my philosophy comes from what I've learned on the farm. So maybe a little bit of a background into me other than just the fact that I grew up on the farm. Who am I? So there's a lot of terms here that people have used to describe me. I've got a background in all kinds of technologies and all kinds of different things. Really, when it comes down to it all, is I'm just a tech nerd. I love technology. I love working with different things, hardware, software. I like to build stuff. I've got a nice build area I've kind of built up over the years. And so I like to get my hands dirty. And because of that, I think I've exposed myself to a lot of different technologies and a lot of different processes over the years that lets me kind of tie different things together that other people might not have thought of in the beginning. So build like a farmer. How do you do that? Growing up on the prairies, I initially felt that growing up on the farm, I was missing out, that there was a lot of different experiences I wasn't having, a lot of different things that I couldn't do simply because I was stuck there on the farm. You know, when the people were going and doing things in the cities, learning all this different tech and stuff, I was stuck there, you know, digging in the dirt and you know, figuring out how to make sure that everything works properly. But later on, I discovered that there's a lot of those experiences were actually critical into how I think now, and that have really been a basis to any success that I've had in technology or life in general. So there's 4 things that I follow on a very regular basis, and I did that with this little project I'm going to be showing you that I built with n8n. So the first principle that I use is the fact that abundance can be the enemy of innovation. If we always have things at our hands and we always have different options available to us, quite often we'll give up too soon. And we don't actually dig into what the problem is and solve it. We just throw it aside and start over. So I think when we force ourselves into something that is a little bit smaller, a little bit tighter, we can get a lot more out of it and become a lot more knowledgeable in the process. Second principle that I like to use is you use the right tool for the right job. This is something my dad really instilled in me. He said that if you've got the right tool available to you, use it. Don't be lazy. You set it up right, you use it properly, and get it all working the way it should be. But there's a corollary to that, that if you don't have the right tool, you make the right tool. And that's one of the beautiful things I like about n8n is that if you don't have a node to do something, it's okay. Chances are, if you're working with an API, the HTTP request node will do for you what you need. So you can actually build out from there with the base tools what you need to get done. And it allows you to kind of move ahead with those tools. And then the last principle is you always need to be willing to help your neighbor. This is one of the things that really attracted me to n8n is the fact that this was not a product that was being built by some big corporation to add to its bottom line, to add to its coffers. It was being done as a passion project that, as Jan had mentioned, he started this out on his own, wanted to grow it out and make it available to other people. And simply because of that, I think it's important that we also give back. And so the tool that I'm going to be showing you here in a moment, I'm going to be making available and at the end of the presentation. Anybody can grab that tool, use it for themselves, no cost. If you need help, reach out, glad to help out and make it work for what you need it to do. So this mysterious tool that I've been talking about is a newsletter sign up workflow. So I'm going to bring that up on the screen here. And if I can find it on my screen, there it is. So I spent a little bit of time over the last, well, this has actually been a work in progress for quite a while. This is the third generation of this workflow tool that I've created. And what this does is it allows you to give people a URL. They can then use that URL to see a web page. They can sign up to the web page. It saves the people's information in a grid on a tool called Baserow. And then from there, it will send them an email where they can click on the registration to confirm that their email is a legitimate email. So this is something we've all done 1,000 times. You sign up for something, this is a process you use. And there's usually a bunch of different systems in behind the scenes. This does the whole thing right from the workflow that you see. The only other component other than this workflow is Baserow itself, which I initially wasn't going to use Baserow. I was initially going to actually store all the information locally in a JSON file, but I wanted to use Baserow just to show you that you don't necessarily need a Baserow node in order to get access to the stuff. So there's three parts, as you can see, to this. So there's three webhooks. There's the sign up webhook, the submit webhook, and the confirm webhook. The sign up webhook in combination with the HTML form and the create form file node, these three nodes will actually create the web page dynamically so that it basically turns n8n into a web server. So we can go to that page. So here's a link to the sign up page. So this web page that you see here was written and created 100% in n8n. This does not access any external files, doesn't pull anything from any other web page. The graphic is actually embedded in the HTML, and the whole thing can be done, again, without having to worry about whether or not you've got a web server running or any other services. And just like a typical web service, you can fill it in. And when you hit submit, this actually fires up the second workflow. So this workflow here just got fired off. So what this does is it pulls the values that were submitted. It then takes that the new subscriber and adds it into the grid. And there's the information that I just entered in. So this is in Baserow. So it put this information in and created this GUID. And we'll see that now I've just had an email come in. And as soon as this pulls up, there's the email that was automatically sent by the workflow. And you'll notice this GUID here is part of the URL that has been sent out. So it connects for me the email address and that GUID so that you can actually tell that this is the right person. So when I click on it, this actually fires up the third workflow, which confirms that, yep, we've got your registration, your email has been confirmed. And in Grid, we now have the confirmed check mark. So once again, all of that was handled by all of these 3 workflows. This is a relatively simple setup. This took me, I think, all told, just building the whole thing out probably took me just to fine tune it and everything, because the web pages took the most fine tuning, maybe 2.5, 3 hours, and completely self-sufficient. So I don't need a web server. I don't need to worry about other services. Yes, I use Grid, but easy enough for me to take these 2 Grid nodes, that I'm calling them Grid nodes, but they're actually HTTP request nodes. Take those 2 nodes and replace them with a file, write and read. So save all that information locally. So as you can see, fairly powerful. The reason I wanted to do something like this, because I was on a call a couple days ago with somebody, and they referred to n8n as middleware. And to be frank, that's kind of where I started out, because I was looking at n8n as a tool to connect A to B. And we quite often use it as such. But I think this goes to show that it can be much more than that. You know, people often say, well, where's the form node? Where do I create a form to input stuff? You don't have to. You can use HTML and spit out the forms right then and there. And the nice thing about this is that you can actually turn these into workflows that you use over and over again, and just call the workflows back so that you push some HTML to it and it spits it all out. And these can become reusable over time. Anyway, that's kind of what I've got. I'm open to questions. Tanny, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Cool. That's really cool. Thanks so much, Jason. And yeah, like if you have any questions, please send them along in the chat. Could be any n8n related questions regarding Jason's workflow.
I will even answer questions about living on the farm.
There we go. So I see a question. Will there be a blog post about the workflow?
Oh, if I must, absolutely. I'm more than happy to write a blog post on the n8n blog about this. And like I said, I will also make the workflow available on the n8n website, where you guys can pull it down and make it your own.
Awesome. Then we have a question from Richard. Can you show how the create form file node works?
Sure. Let me reshare my screen. So there's really 2 parts to that. The first one is the create the HTML form. So this is really just, this is a set form. And oh, actually, you guys can't see this yet. There we go. So this is a set form, the create HTML form that we have. So this one here, just a regular set form. All I did is I created a variable called HTML, and I gave it a value of, surprise, surprise, the HTML. And then I passed that through to the create form file, which looks to the HTML source, creates an HTML key, and then it will spit out a binary. And because I've set up the webhook to show the first binary property called HTML, it will actually spit it out as a file. So it's kind of it's a neat little trick that, yes, this is all just text and stuff we're working with, but we make the rest of the internet think it's actually a file. So there's some really interesting applications around this, because you're not stuck with just HTML. You could do something that will convert it into like a PDF file. So great potential to maybe turn this into a PDF generator. Or even if you wanted to get really funky, if you could hook into a compiler on the back end, you could custom compile in real time applications for people, and that they would have their own version of an application, and they would actually get the executable that they could download. So there's some very neat things that you can do with that. So imagine being able to offer a curated application that every person who gets it, it's their own specific version that's not just controlled by a config file. The actual binary is their own. Sounds like maybe you could do some interesting things with NFTs with that, for those of you who are into that thing.
Cool.
Anyway,
Any
next.
other questions? Okay, we'll wait for a minute before we move on.
And don't be afraid to reach out to me about other things, even outside of this. I even do bar mitzvahs. More than happy to help out with pretty much anything.
What's the best way to reach out to you, Jason?
Your best bet is to catch me on Twitter. Usually that's where I am found, and I will even go right back to page 1, right there. So usually known as Teflon or Teflon Dude around. There's been a few times I've met people as Jason, and even when I first started working for n8n, John posted out that, oh, by the way, you may know Jason as Teflon, and a few jaws I could hear drop from Berlin. Surprised at who I actually was. So people don't tend to expect a 50-something old dude as the guy who you get to know as Teflon.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much, Jason.
Not a problem. I will hand things back to you.
Perfect. Thank you.
If I can figure out how to stop sharing. Oh, here it is.
Perfect. And then next up is Richard. So let me, oops. Richard can, perfect.
There we go. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Cool. Before I go, that was awesome. Until that moment, I was still thinking about n8n mostly as connecting in between. So really just like changed the way I see the whole product. In any case, what I wanted to show you guys today was more on the business side of what you can accomplish with n8n and a bunch of other tools as well. So let me share my screen. Okay. Where's the, I think it's here, full screen. Can you guys see my screen? Perfect. Cool. So yeah, I'll just get started. Basically, my talk is called Delighting Customers at Scale, using n8n to power an operations-heavy business. So a little bit of background on me. I'm more just like a maker, independent entrepreneur. Been running a web design business with my wife now for a handful of years, but that's pretty part-time at this point. And now we're really focused on like just building side projects, working on things, trying to build up a portfolio of independent businesses, profitable businesses. So that's kind of the idea. I'm buddies with Ben from the n8n team. So chatted with him in the fall of last year. So not too many months ago. He told me about n8n, got me early access to n8n Cloud. And I had a project in mind that I wanted to test out. So I had recently moved to Portugal about a year ago. One piece of the puzzle was getting a tax ID, which is a little bit challenging because you need to get a Portuguese citizen to actually apply on your behalf. And I noticed that there weren't many ways there wasn't an easy way to get that done. People would go to Facebook groups and they'd be like, hey, who can help me get this tax ID? And basically everyone's like, oh, DM this person or DM that person. There's like no website, there's no price transparency, none of this kind of stuff. Looks like Max is trying to enter. So my wife and I thought like, oh, why don't we just put together a simple website, collect the order, find a law firm partner here locally in Portugal to actually get the tax ID for people and, whatever, see if we can make a couple of orders a month and have a nice little dinner or something. That was the idea. It kind of turned out to be a little bit bigger than that, and I'll show you guys the results so far. But let's go ahead. So let me see this. Okay. I wonder how I hide this thing. Whatever, let's just roll with this. Okay, so Border is our company name. And at this point, we started out with just like helping people get tax ID, but we're reformulating how we view ourselves, and we're thinking about more like we help people relocate to Portugal. So we started with tax ID, but we're working on bank account services and a number of other services in the pipeline as well. Let's go ahead. Started as a side project, launched on Twitter, got my first customer a couple days later from Twitter. And then we started reaching out to influencers, primarily on YouTube, people who had moved to Portugal, talking about the process of moving here. And a lot of their audience are interested in relocating here. A lot of retirees like leaving the United States or wherever country and trying to come here. So, and the tax ID recently has become a requirement for submitting your application. So it's a key component here. So in the past few months, a lot has happened, and I'll show you some stats. We've earned over $50,000 in revenue, and we've fulfilled over 350 paid orders. That's unique customers, and we also have a wait list of about 250 people on the bank account services and a number of other services beyond that. The bank account's the one that we're currently working on. It's still just my wife and myself, and I just wanted to show you kind of what we've been able to achieve, primarily because of n8n, to be honest. This is our Trustpilot reviews. You can see people like us. We've had 54 reviews so far, all 5 stars, 100%. What's really funny is that if you take a look at our reviews, if you just read some of these things, like Richard kept me informed along the way, which is greatly appreciated. Basically, people are thinking, since I'm using n8n to send transactional emails using Postmark as our email provider, I just sign off the emails as my own name, and if they respond, of course I respond. But people actually think that I'm the one keeping them up to date at every step of the way. But so it works out for everyone, you know. It's pretty nice, and we do have transactional emails, like literally for receiving your order when you submit your power of attorney that's been signed, and then like literally, you know, every day or so you get a message, and we've been fortunate enough to have a pretty quick turnaround. So just after a few days, we've been able to turn the tax IDs around to our customers. I'll show you our tech stack, and this is where it got really fun. On the front end, we're using Next.js, just a simple static website. I'm using Paperform as our checkout. So this handles the information intake. It also handles the payment along with Powered by Stripe. Using Airtable as our backend database at the moment. Everything gets sent into there. Process Street, this is for handling like tasks. So when we assign, we work with law firms, right? So when we assign a task to the law firm, they complete the task there. They can upload files, whatnot. It basically provides like a self-contained UI so that when they upload things, they don't mess up. I'm not giving them access to my Airtable directly. So once they submit something, then I send it over to Airtable. I'm using Anvil this is an API for generating PDFs, Postmark for the transactional emails. Zapier a little bit when I have to, because some services only, or at least on the tier that I'm on, only integrate with Zapier and don't have an open API. But for everything else, and I'd much rather use n8n, it's because it's just a lot more powerful from my perspective. I would say n8n is the much bigger piece that's connecting everything right now. And just wanted to show you some of how we've been able to scale the operations, because, you know, as you can imagine, like 300 customers is a ton of people for us to like manually do everything. And we started everything manually, but over time I've been able to automate more and more with n8n and a lot of these tools. So two key categories that have helped us scale, or one is like automation. So I listed a bunch of things here, like adding the order to Airtable, generating the power of attorney, PDF using Anvil, sending the transactional emails with Postmark, creating the task in Process Street. So all of these things we used to do manually, and now we've been able to automate a lot of it. And then secondly is, which is super powerful and takes a little bit of creative thinking, is like, how can you turn some of your parts of your application or some parts of your workflow into self-service options? So one part was people would have to send us their signed PDF, and I would manually upload that into Airtable. And so what I've done instead is I create a paper form where they can, and it tracks their ID similar to, I forget your name already, but Teflon's thing with his GUID. It tracks that in the URL, and so then it automatically will update their row in Airtable with this attached file. So the self-service is like the super cool stuff. I think automation was the more obvious stuff, but the two of these things combined have really enabled us to scale our operations without having to sacrifice any of the customer service that we wanted to provide. And let me see. So we've got, I just wanted to show a couple of screenshots of the workflows that we've got going on here. Nothing crazy. It's more of the thinking about n8n as like the middleware between applications. So here I'm using the Airtable trigger, and then I'm like filtering off of that. I've got the split and batches node, generate like a timestamp. And then here, like, for example, over time, we've like learned different parts of the application. So like the template is different, like the power of attorney is different if you're under 18 or if you're over 18. So we handle that case. And then we basically use the HTTP request node. I don't recall what this is. I think, oh, this is to generate the PDF using Anvil. And then I had to do a workaround with AWS to be able to actually update the file in Airtable. But yeah, anyway, that's one workflow for creating the power of attorney and having that automatically sent to the customer. And then this workflow is when we receive the tax ID, which is called a NIF in Portugal. I actually just basically attach it to an email, send it out to our customer, again, using the HTTP request node as well. And this integrates with Postmark. And then I update it in Airtable, just basically logging to make sure that we know that we've sent these things out. And that's about it. So I'll leave it at that. If you guys have any questions about the business side, about the implementation side, happy to answer.
Cool. Thank you so much, Richard. So I already see a question. It says, nice, can you please explain how you generate the PDF file?
Yeah, sure. Basically, let me see if I can. Well, okay, so I won't open it right now, but basically what I use is, I can just, how do I stop sharing my screen? Okay, so basically I use this service called Use Anvil, I believe. And they allow you to have, to create like templates. And in those templates, you can insert variables. And so, and then you can basically just use like a post request to actually generate a PDF. And so what happens is I collect the data from Airtable. And so I get the fields that I need, and then I run a post request over to Anvil. Anvil will generate that PDF, and it actually returns the actual file to me. So then in that situation, what I have to do next is I actually have to get a live link. I actually upload it temporarily to AWS S3, and that's how I'm able to move that over into Airtable.
Cool. Then I see a question from Puneet, who asks, can you elaborate why n8n over Zapier, basically pros and cons for you?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think Zapier is really good. So the way I see it is Zapier abstracts a lot more, or tries to abstract the code a lot more than n8n does. n8n, I feel, is more like a UI on top of the APIs. So one thing here that becomes very obvious is like when you're working with the Airtable API, Zapier does like, it is like, when I was switching from Zapier to Airtable, there was like a lot more customizability that I had in able to check things. But the key differences between n8n and Zapier for me are like, n8n is a lot more flexible in terms of maintenance over time. You can actually, like with Zapier, you can only add forks, like branches, at the end of workflows. Whereas at n8n, it's just like you can cut it, put in an if statement or a fork or a loop, whatever you want, and you can just move them around. You can copy them and whatnot. So I found that to be really nice. In Zapier, I have some, like Zapier is really good if you do like 1-2 steps, like no problem. But I was doing things where it's like 8, 9, 10 steps. And if you wanted to add a fork, then you have to like, it's really dumb. You have to create a completely new workflow, try to copy things and you'll miss things. It's just a horrible experience. So I just found that n8n is like for some things, Zapier is really good if it's very simple, but I found that n8n just has a lot more flexibility.
Cool. Then I see a question from Jason, who asks, what is your process for identifying parts of your business workflow that you can automate with n8n?
That's a good question. I don't really know. Okay, here's the key thing, I suppose. The key for me is doing the manual work myself. I kind of intuitively know, or it's easier for me just to identify what is automatable or not. My wife, who's less technical, if she's running the operations manually, she doesn't really know what is possible to automate or not. And so her solution is kind of just brute force, just like, okay, manually, let's just keep going with it. And for me, it's like, I really hate doing the same thing over and over again. So that's where like, I'm like, oh, it was like, I got really creative and came up with I can make a self-service solution where the customer can just upload their signed PDF and I don't have to be an in-between. And then it'll just kind of get routed to the law firm. And so it's a pretty seamless experience. I guess part of it is understanding the possibilities of how things can be connected and automated, but then experiencing that myself. So in a way, it's like, even though I don't like experiencing the pain, it's like, I feel like I need to experience the pain because I'm the one between the two of us in the best position to understand what can be automated or come up with these creative solutions around like self-service.
Cool. And I see one more question from Max, who asks, if you had one magic wish to make n8n perfect, what would it be?
Interesting. I think I haven't played around with creating nodes yet. I was actually trying to do that with n8n one time, but we had run into issues. So I think that if that process were more seamless, I would do it more frequently. Right now, it's like I ran into this yesterday actually. Like I upgraded my Paperform subscription, so now I can actually get access to their API. I'm actually trying to migrate from Airtable over to Firestore instead, and I want to be able basically just populate the data from Paperform over into Firestore. And I was thinking about how I can do it in n8n, because one thing that I want to do is I actually want to upload the file into Firestore rather than just putting like a URL. And I wasn't really sure how to do it. So I actually just was like, screw it, I'll just like do it in Zapier first just to get it done. And then I'll come back and try to do this more robustly later on. So I think something like that. I'm not quite exactly, I haven't thought about this too much from the n8n perspective, but from a user's perspective, it does feel like for some use cases, Zapier is like faster. And I think that if n8n could basically compete better, even at those like simple use cases, then it'd be a no-brainer. Like I would just like get rid of Zapier almost entirely.
Cool. And Max says, awesome, thanks.
Absolutely.
Right, 1 more minute. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, then we are gonna move on to our next talk, which is by Clément, and take it away, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Tanay. So today I'm going to talk to you about the use case that I use mostly on n8n, and to give you a little bit of context. I work on a tech company, and I was on the growth team, which was mostly doing the acquisition side of things, which means that I had to automate the lead generation. And for that, I had to work with growth marketers, which are the one who were going to build the workflow. And I was the one doing the discovery for using n8n. So to give a little bit of context of why I choose n8n, I think that Richard explained it completely just before, which was the struggle of Zapier, Integromat, or anything to create branches, where in n8n I could create the workflow that I wanted with the complexity that I needed. I could do everything that I had in my mind. And also I had all of the integration that I needed. I don't know if I can share, I can't share my screen right now, but as soon as I can, I'm going to show you something. Okay. So basically, I needed to connect all of the different tools that I was using internally for the lead acquisition things. It was mostly for the engage part of things, like talking to the customer or the prospect. And for that, we add internally a lot of data that we provided to our growth marketers, and we allow them to use all of this data. So basically what we created was a way for our growth marketers to automate all of the lead acquisition. And for that, we provided them with a webhook where we sent the data for each segment of prospect they wanted. For example, they wanted all of the people that worked in finance that had a company of a size of more than 50 employees. This would go through a webhook, and then they could create their whole workflow with all the conditions they needed. So check in the CRM if we already know this person or not. If we do not, then do an action. If we do, then we stop the workflow, or maybe we will send it some kind of email telling, hey, we exist, something like that. But we had a little struggle that we managed to overcome thanks to the n8n and what it allows us to do. We are basically able to, if we have a problem, we can solve it in any way we want, and mostly with this HTTP request and webhook handler. What's really cool is that in the same canvas, we can have multiple webhook triggers for an action. So basically here, my use case was that I had some prospects that would come through this webhook, but at some step, I was missing the email. And without the email, I'm not able to contact my prospect. So I had an action that here, imagine that it is an HTTP request that asks for a service for an email. But sometimes the service would not give me an email. So it would be problematic, as I wouldn't be able to continue the workflow. And so internally, we created something, we asked humans to do the task, but the process it was asynchronous. The people that were going to do the action and try to find the email by hand would not do it instantly. So we could not just use HTTP requests. So for that, we created our own services somewhere. So it could be any services that provides you with a HTTP call when the action is finished. And so here I define something called return URL, which has the value for the webhook just behind. So now my growth marketers were able to overcome this issue of asynchronous steps by just creating a request to our server. The human would do the action, and when the action would finish, I would get back the answer here and continue the flow as if nothing happened and there were no asynchronous steps. So now, as of right now, my growth marketers are completely autonomous. They don't need any technical skills, and they automated more than 10 workflows to create the lead generation of my company. And now we can say proudly that every week we have more than 100 qualified leads that come through the pipes. And I don't have the value now for as of many became customers, but I'm sure that it's going to grow in the next few weeks, few months. And that's mostly thanks to n8n. And yeah, if you have any question, go for it.
It's awesome. Thank you so much, Clément. So yeah, please share your questions in the chat. Okay, so we kind of move on to, oh, okay, I do see a question. So how long did this take you to put together from Adam?
Well, it was mostly in the discovery phase that I did with Max and a little bit with Tane. I asked about this asynchronous thing, and we talked a little bit about how we could do it. And this came out quite early. What took the most time was we had to create inner tools, because we have our custom enrichment tools or custom so we had to create our own nodes for this. No, the nodes at the bottom template are not templated actions. They're just the nodes that we use internally. I wasn't sure I could show the workflow entirely, so I just showed you the different nodes that we connect. But yeah, we had to create our own nodes, and that was what took the most time. But again, Tane helped me with the creation, so it was pretty smooth to do that.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Clément. And then we'll move on. Sorry. Okay. So we'll move on to the next session. So unfortunately, because of an emergency, Mikhail is unable to attend today, but Harshil will be showcasing something cool that he built with n8n. So Harshil, please take it away.
All right. Hello, everyone. Let me start with sharing my screen. Here we go. Awesome. So my name is Harshil, and I work as a junior developer advocate at n8n. And I love to experiment with new tools and technologies, and every day I try to connect n8n with different stuff. So recently I've been playing around with connecting n8n with iOS shortcuts, and I have been able to successfully do that. So that's something interesting, and I'm always playing around with n8n. So a few months back, I built an application for tracking my expenses. So I had to move to Berlin, and I'm not pretty good at tracking my expenses. So I was like, hey, I need to do something, because if I run out of if I run out of money in Berlin, I don't have any other source to survive, right? So I came up with this interesting tool that Bravo Studio, which basically Tana introduced me to, and I really like the concept about it. So it is basically using the Figma design to build the front end of the application. So uh, this is the design that I am currently using. So if you see, there are like three different screens. The first screen gives two options to add new receipt, and just check my receipt. And there is this another screen which will basically embeds a type form where I can upload an image. All this processing happens in n8n, and then it adds the information to my Airtable, which is again connected to my application, and that information I can see in my receipt screen. So let me show you how it looks in n8n. So as I mentioned, I am using the typeform to get this information. So I use the typeform trigger node. So whenever I submit a new receipt, this workflow gets executed. It gets and then the HTTP request node gets the image from the typeform. And the most interesting part happens in the Mindy node, which basically extracts all the necessary information, like the name of the merchant, the amount that I spent, the date of the invoice, and all these things. And then in the set node, I am setting all the information that I want to store in my Airtable, and then I'm just appending it to the Airtable. So let me quickly try to execute this and show you how it looks. So choose a file. I hope I have a receipt. and I'm just going to submit this. If I come back over here, you see all my nodes got executed and it's working. So let's check all the nodes individually. So if I check on the typeform node, I basically get the URL, which I'm using in the next node, that is the HTTP request node, to fetch the binary. Right? If I click on binary and show binary data, you can see the image over here. Now, earlier this was, a manual process. This could have been a manual process to, add the name of the merchant, add the category, and then add the amount as well. So with the Mindy node, it extracts all the information. So you can see I got the currency, the name of the merchant, the amount, the date as well as the category. So that was really helpful to, automate it. And then the set node, as I mentioned earlier, I'm just using it to set the information that I basically want to append to a table. And then the add table over here just appends the information. So if I go to my add table, okay, yeah, over here. So it has the information, the amount, and all the other information that I want. So currently I am trying to do something over here. Instead of using the type form, I'm just trying to use iOS shortcut. So, I don't have to open the application. I can just click on that shortcut, take a picture, and, allow n8n to do the processing and then, add it to the add table. So that's some of the things that I'm currently experimenting with. And I am also trying to, scale this application where, I can also specify that, hey, this is the thing, this is something that I bought for me and my friend, and we have to divide this amount among ourselves. So that is something also that I'm kind of currently working on. And yeah, that's I am looking forward to scale.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Harshil. Do we have any questions? How did you come up with the iOS shortcut idea?
That's a good question. So I recently got an iPhone, and I was like checking out, like as I said, I very much like technology and experiment things. So I was like, hey, iOS shortcut, this is something new. Let's try it out. So that's how I came up with the idea of playing around with iOS shortcut and n8n, and that's basically how I got the idea.
Cool. Do we have any other questions regarding this session? Chris mentions he uses the Google Drive Scan app without automation, but this is really cool. Awesome. So thank you so much. And before we head on to the office hours part where we'll answer questions, I'd like to just extend a big thanks to our speakers and all of you who took out the time to attend our first meetup. And we are really, really excited to be able to support you in your automation journey and really can't wait to see what you build. So in case you're heading out, I wish you a great weekend. And for those of you who are joining us for the office hours, if you have any questions for any of the speakers about their sessions, about n8n, your use cases or workflows, please send them along in the chat and we'd be very happy to help. Okay, so I think, let me unmute Jan. So Jan, we had a question from before that we didn't answer from Bjorn.
What was the question?
Just digging it up. So he says, not related to license, but what's the current goal or roadmap for the company, team, scaling, etc.?
Roadmap for like for the product, what we are currently focusing on, product company, is getting n8n version 1.0 out, meaning we make n8n, making things more consistent, more stable, easier to use. Feature-wise, are we working right now on user management, and another big feature that's going to come up next is going to be multi-tenancy. Scale-wise, are we currently, as of today, we are a team of 16 people, end of the year, we are aiming to be around 25. I'm not sure what other aspects you mean, maybe, or did it answer your question?
Bjorn, in case like you have more follow-up questions, please share. Till then, we're gonna move on to the next one. So question from Sean, are there plans to incorporate team management for the community version?
I mean, team management, I guess it's user management. And the community version, like there's no difference between the normal community version and the hosted version or anything else. Like there's only one code and they're all 100% identical. So even the cloud runs the same Docker image you can download for free. So it means the user management is gonna get added to the totally regular version like everything else.
Good. So I see a question that got answered. Yeah, useanvil.com was the PDF generator that Richard had.
There's also another one we got recently with API template. It's very cheap and seems to work fine. So I can just recommend it also. I think they have like 50 free per month.
Cool. Any other questions, folks? Okay, so how do people find third-party services? Is that from you, Richard?
Yeah, it's kind of a two-part thing, but my thing got cut. But basically, I saw Mindy and was just curious how you guys typically search for APIs. Like one of the things that we collect, we collect passports, and right now we're manually checking. And I'm just looking at Mindy, and they have passport extraction as a use case. I'm like, well, maybe I should just use that instead of manually doing it. You know, so just curious if, like, I don't know, how you guys typically discover these nodes, search them.
Yeah.
Hello. Okay. There are multiple ways. Like for some nodes, obviously we get pull requests, so external people create them. If we create the extension, the nodes, normally we get them from the community, meaning people can request nodes to be created. They can upvote it, and then the more people upvote, the more interest there is. Obviously, then the higher priority it is for us. Additionally, do we look for interesting use cases we think n8n could be particularly helpful, and then think about, okay, how could we solve the problem? Then we look for nodes we would need to do that, and then we create them. But right now it's still pretty much, the most of them are community driven.
Cool. So I see another question from Tom. Can you share your plans for organizing larger number of workflows going forward? This was a topic on the forum a while back, and I would be interested to hear what's coming up.
I think probably Max can talk best about that. He designed that. I think he probably is the one you're talking about regarding the forum.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So it's in progress right now. And to give you an idea, because in progress is maybe a bit ambiguous, the feature's been designed and it's being coded out. And even today, I was working with Mutasim on some of the front end stuff there. So it's very much being developed and will be released. The idea there is it's free-form workflow tagging. So you can create tags and then apply them to your workflows. And then in your workflows view, we'll be making some changes there, so you can sort of do some filtering, combining tags and whatnot. So that's the plan for that one. That should be out relatively soon.
Cool. Thanks, Max. Another question, upcoming features.
Upcoming features. That was the whole question.
Yes.
What we just talked about, the workflow organization, use management. One is gonna, another one is also, right now it's very hard to discover some nodes within n8n. So the node creation tab, on the right side, that currently lists like all the nodes in no particular fashion, except that they're alphabetically ordered. one other feature that's going to come out there is that they are all now categorized. So you can find them by category, and you can also, the core nodes going to get listed first, because we had the problems that a lot of people did not even know about the very important core nodes. And like that, we now make sure that these very important core nodes get listed first so that nobody else can miss them anymore, which I think going to make it generally much easier usable, because without a lot of the core functionality, things are much more complicated than they have to be. I think that are the main things that are coming up right now. We also had David join last week. He's the new head of product, and yeah, there's more things going to come up there soon. Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Hey, David.
Hey guys.
Hi.
Yeah. Thanks for unmuting me, man. Yeah, nice to meet you all. Like Jan said, I've just joined, but very, very much looking forward to getting up to speed and improving this product as fast as possible to make it as useful as we can for you. So I've heard some great suggestions on this call and also in individual calls with people, and would love to maybe set up some individual sessions with some of you to hear about how you use n8n and what you would like to see in the future.
And David,
so if you're interested in that, I'll put my email in the chat. You can just ping me and we can set something up.
Perfect. And we can find you in the forum as well, right, David?
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So the next question we have is, how do you name your workflows or version control them?
How do I name them? To be honest, at the moment, that I did not find the perfect system yet. I really hope that as soon as we have the workflow tagging, the name is going to become less important. So I have normally I separate them, like normally kind of use case and then a more specific name, that I find them easier because we don't have tagging and so get around that. But sorry, there's nothing I can share there.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next question is, would you consider node sprint sessions?
Node sprint session, sorry.
Jean, could you maybe add a bit more about that? Okay. Meanwhile, I see another question. What are the biggest or most complex workflows that you've ever seen?
I think there's a nice thread in the forum about that.
I'll drop a link to that.
Yeah, there are some really cool use cases, examples. You just posted the link already. Cool. Yeah, these are probably one of the most complex ones. Like I normally tend to making them more modular. Like I use the execute workflow node a lot, meaning I create sub workflows and split them into smaller pieces that let them get them too big. So my workflows are normally quite short because I split them apart like that. So I can also recommend that. It makes stuff more modular and easier to extend and easier to understand, especially.
Cool. Thanks, Jan. I see another question from Jean. Was like, or demo sessions as how to create nodes. So I can share a link to our YouTube channel. Me and two of our colleagues did some live. Oh, I sent it as a direct message. I put it in the chat. We did some live streaming sessions showcasing how we created some nodes with post-hoc and dpair. We're going to have more of these weekly live streams going forward. So watch our YouTube channel and Twitch channel as well. So more things coming there.
And regarding node creation, it's also the node creation guide got updated and extended a lot. And there's also one upcoming for the trigger nodes. I think is much easier to get started with node creation than it was a few months ago.
I'm dropping a link as well to the node creation guide. Perfect.
Is there a way to programmatically back up the nodes? Around a month ago, we added an option to the CLI where you can export your workflows as JSON. You can select if you want to export all of them in one file or in different files. If you can theoretically do that with n8n, meaning you can create an n8n workflow that kind of backs up that workflows and then pushes them into GitHub. There is also as a Git node coming up, which would be helpful there to do it with any kind of Git, not just GitHub. Sadly, there is no current way to do that in a better way. Like it's still planned to be at Node for versioning, because that's I just see how powerful it is. And right now we have for sure some shortcomings regarding, especially if you have the same workflow open 2 times and you override it, then literally all your changes are gone because you overridden something else. So that's going to be also one priority we want to improve, which is general usability, and is also workflow versioning is one thing we also want to do. Sadly, right now, that's a really big shortcoming on the n8n side. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Jan. The next question is, it would be, okay, I'm not sure if this got answered. Is there an internal process for handling the pull requests?
Right now, Omar is the point person to look at the pull request, meaning normally, to be honest, we have like a workflow which always posts them into MetaMost when there's a new pull request. I normally try to review them directly. Sadly, my time sometimes very limited, so I don't really find time for that. Then there's Omar, which has a deeper look at them. To be honest, right now we are doing not a very amazing job getting pull requests merged as fast as we want to, because there's simply a huge backlog and so much other stuff going on right now. More news in the next weeks about that. But really, we are working also improving that workflow, making sure that the process of merging pull requests gets speeded up and is also more clear, especially that we have in the past very often pull requests that did not get merged for a long time, because partly I was not sure if they're right for n8n or not, the current stage. So in the future, we really tried to also improve that, meaning if we don't want to merge a pull request, we want to communicate it very directly and very fast and say why we don't do that, just that it's very clear for the community why it is. And if we're on that subject, if somebody wants to create like a bigger feature, especially a core feature in n8n, they're obviously always more than welcome. But we can, in this sense, obviously the more deep they are, the more complex they are, the lower the chances that they get merged without having talked to us first. So if you want to make like a bigger core change and you have an idea, it would be really great if you reach out to us, also ask on the forum, and then we have a short conversation with the engineers that the stuff get implemented the right way, that we can make sure that the work is not lost. Because like it's very horrible if we know that somebody invests a lot of time and the work is lost, and it's even worse for the person who did all the work. So we really want to make sure that it doesn't happen. So please, if you want to make any larger changes, reach out to us first, and then we can have a short chat about that.
Juliana had a follow-up question about that. So while discussing these features that are related to core or nodes, so what's the best place to have this discussion? Is that as a GitHub issue, or should it be on the community forum?
Always, like for now, what we do is we have everything in the community forum except bugs. Maybe we're going to reiterate it at some point, but at the moment we try to keep everything in the forum as long as possible, unless it's really a bug, because they have to be directly code related. But please open something in the forum first.
Cool. So I think we have covered all the questions that are in the chat. In case I missed the question, please paste it again. I'm sorry. And yeah, I think Jan will be online for 10 more minutes in case you have any questions.
As people are dropping off, also thank you everybody for joining. It was really great that you've been part of the first meetup ever. So yeah, looking forward to many more. Very appreciated. Thanks.
So the next meetup, I see a question around the next meetup. So should be roughly around in a month. So once we finalize the list of speakers and so on, we should send out an invite very soon. Okay, I see another question. Would it be possible to export the workflows to AWS Lambda or Cloudflare workers? I want to reduce the startup latency. It's from Yosef.
to Lambda, yes, you could. Yeah, I never did it, but I don't see a reason why it wouldn't be possible. But to be, yeah, it should be possible, yes. But not sure what you want to do. If you want to start one specific workflow, if you want to have n8n, like you could do it if you want to have one specific workflow. We still have the CLI that runs a workflow and then stops, so it would work fine. You could obviously not have n8n running in Lambda, because like things like trigger nodes, like the cron node, really depend that n8n keeps on running forever and doesn't get stopped in between. So if you really just want to have a workflow run, then it would be possible, but we don't have an example for that right now.
I've actually used Lambda for a couple of things, and essentially I already had something running in Lambda that could accept a webhook connection. So basically turned Lambda into a form of a API. And then I just did an API call out using the HTTP request node from n8n, and got it to process the data, got the data back to me, and then was able to carry on with the workflow from there.
Also, maybe I misunderstood the question. I thought it was about running a workflow in Lambda. If it is executing a Lambda function and getting the data into n8n, we even have a Lambda function, Lambda node, which also can do that. So it would also be possible without the HTTP request node. Sorry, I misunderstood the question there.
Or maybe I did. That's possible too.
I see another comment from Yusuf. He says, usually the webhook workflows are pretty slow, so I would like to host them on Lambda. Does that maybe clarify the question?
The webhook workflows are pretty slow. That sounds like the n8n is actually much faster than Lambda generally. The only thing I can think of right now why it would be slow, if you use the default mode, and in the default mode it starts a new process for every workflow execution, meaning it has like a second startup time for that reason. But if you start everything in the main process, I post a link to that in a second. It's just setting one environment variable, and then it's gonna run everything in the main process. Actually, gonna get a response incredible fast. So it's gonna be much faster than doing it in Lambda. Here's the node. Here's the documentation link. So if you just set an environment variable, and it's gonna be super fast there. Ah, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Right, folks, any other questions before we part for the evening?
I have one quick question, Jan.
Mm-hmm.
What automations do you use in your day-to-day life?
To be honest, I use, because actually I don't have anything privately automated, to be honest. It's all work related to 100%, to be honest. And also it's like actually all, like you have a lot of MetaMo / commands that I created and I use a lot, like getting statistics, setting up like for getting call links, things like that. They're like mainly gathering data. I do a lot. And for example, I also have like something we're gonna launch soon is like bash dash, where you can actually have like / commands in the terminal. I mean, like I have like one command where I use Asana for tracking the task I have to do. I also have like a / command there, touch / dash Asana and then the task. Stuff like that, just to don't have to open Asana first, which takes a long time. Just try to always shave off a few seconds there every time. Things like that I do a lot, but it's a lot of data gathering, because there's always things that took me a long time, and also data collection. Like we have this one workflow that collects every day like a data from GitHub, from cloud, from Facebook, from LinkedIn, from everywhere, gathers all the data and saves it, that we know how we are growing and how people are using n8n. So it's a lot of data related things on my side.
Cool. And I sent a link to a post that we published with Mattermost a few, I think yesterday. And it covers like some of the automations that we use with our chat tool. So in case you're looking for inspiration, I think that's a good source as well.
And because it's just a conversation about the main setting, like it makes n8n not just much fast, it's also gonna need much less memory because you don't have to spin up a new process. So even if you have to want to have a high throughput through n8n, you really have to set that setting. It's gonna make a huge difference about on the performance of n8n.
All right, folks, in case we wait 1 more minute and in case there are no more questions, we'll call it an evening. Okay, all right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It was really, really cool to have you all join. And thanks to the speakers as well for presenting what they have been working on and sharing with the community. So see you in the next meetup and have a nice weekend, everyone.
And thanks to Natasha for organizing everything. Really cool. Great work. And thanks everybody else for participating. See ya. Ciao.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.